It is becoming increasingly popular in the indie gaming scene to create powerful, narrative-driven games with adorable animal leads. For example, we very recently featured a game similar to the one we're discussing today called Farewell North. In that particular title, we control a border collie through an emotional and spiritual journey. Now we have Copycat from Spoonful of Wonder, which, if it wasn't obvious from the title, puts players in control of a feline friend. But does Copycat copy the formula successfully, or should you toss it into the litter box? Let's find out in our full review. Speaking of litter boxes, you know what else stinks? Missing out on awesome indie gaming content like this. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and head over to patreon.com/idreamofindiegames to gain Discord access, early and ad-free shows, and so much more. Your new indie gaming community is waiting for you. Copycat tells the story of Olive, a lonely and sick elderly woman, and her soon-to-be adopted cat, Dawn. With Olive looking for new companionship after her previous cat's mysterious disappearance, she visits the local adoption center and is presented with 6 different kitties. After being briefed on each cat's personality traits, she must choose one of them to take home. This choice mostly seems related to the appearance of your cat. I tried picking another cat after completing the 3-hour campaign, and in the 30 minutes or so that I tested playing as the new adoptee, not much seemed different. Having not been treated well by her previous owner, Dawn is apprehensive of humans, and is naturally skeptical of Olive at first. While Olive presents herself as warm and kind, Dawn is initially a bit shy and hostile, even hiding from her new owner entirely. However, the more time the two spend together, the more Dawn begins to trust and love Olive. Unfortunately, just as the two begin growing close to one another, Olive falls ill, and without spoiling too much of the story, this leads to Dawn being accidentally replaced by a similar-looking cat. The story is well told for the most part, and brief enough to keep players invested until the end. It was interesting to see the relationship between a human and a cat from the cat's perspective. One narrative device that I particularly enjoyed was Dawn's thoughts being stylistically displayed on screen as you traverse locations. As a cat owner myself, I have often wondered what my cat is thinking about. In Copycat, you get to physically see what your cat is thinking about. Beyond that, the game goes a step further and lets you explore the inner workings of Dawn's emotions. Throughout gameplay, a TV narrator often interjects, spewing nature facts about cats both big and small. At first, these interruptions may seem like trivia for the sake of it, but as you progress, it becomes obvious that the narrator is not only filling the player with knowledge, but Dawn herself with confidence and hope. This is further highlighted by dreamlike sequences where Dawn learns to find courage, strength, and bravery through embodying a larger feline form. While many games have put us in control of fur babies before, few have dared to explore their deeper thoughts and emotions the same way Copycat does. That said, the storytelling isn't perfect. The dream sequences can sometimes feel a little bit jarring, almost out of place, and flat voice performances don't pack much of an emotional punch at all. Despite this, Copycat's bold exploration of heavy topics involving love, loss, and abandonment deserve praise.
The wildcat must choose her hiding spot. Quickly now, Dawn, with haste!
Come with me, upstairs.
With Copycat being a narrative-driven experience, players shouldn't expect incredibly complex gameplay. While there are times where you'll have complete control of Dawn, much of the game involves completing simple minigames and quick-time events. This makes the game feel pretty linear, scripted, and not open to a great deal of exploration. Much of your experience takes place within the confines of Olive's house, but eventually the world will open up a bit to include a small chunk of the local neighborhood. Copycat gives players a small set of choices throughout gameplay as well. As one example, you can choose to be nice and playful to Olive, or you can claw at her. Your choices didn't seem to matter as much as I would have liked, with the game mostly following a clear trajectory towards its admittedly satisfying conclusion. It would have been nice to have deeper consequences for your actions, or maybe even a good or evil path to choose between, but you won't really get that here. When exploring areas on foot, Dawn is limited in actions. You can meow, jump, and interact with key areas and items, but not much else. The game does offer some light platforming sections, but they don't feel particularly great. Outside of the option to sprint, there isn't much else to be concerned with. The positive side to the game's simplicity is that almost anyone can pick it up and play without issue, including younger audiences. The game even goes as far as to offer guidance should you become lost, which honestly didn't feel all that necessary given the scope and size of the experience. This simplicity carries over to the various minigames and QuickTime events encountered throughout gameplay. The objective is the same for just about every one of these segments, to push the correct buttons displayed on the screen in time. Even if you aren't fast enough to press the buttons before time runs out, the game will eventually allow you to do so without any penalty or timer. These segments of the game can be funny at times, but lack any significant substance. It also feels like a bit of a missed opportunity to not feature a vast array of collectibles throughout the town that you'll explore. It would have been fun to go through backyards, climb up on roofs, and even search through trees to find hidden trinkets. Games such as the recently released Squirrel with a Gun showed us that running around as an adorable animal and tackling ridiculous side quests while finding collectibles can be really fun. Sadly, you just don't get that here outside of a few Easter eggs and achievements. The game does attempt to mix things up a bit here or there, even offering a stealth section, but it doesn't end up adding much to the overall experience. Long story short, don't expect much challenge out of Copycat, and don't anticipate a deep gameplay experience because you won't find one. Credit where it's due though, Copycat did just enough to keep me running towards the finish line. Copycat's visual presentation is a bit of a mixed bag. Indoor areas look bland, while the game flexes its graphical muscle when you finally make your way outside. The town looks quite lovely, with nice weather effects and lighting, and the developer has done a fantastic job animating Dawn. It is obvious a great deal of love went into studying the movement of a cat, and I think they've really nailed it outside of some pretty silly looking jumping animations. Sadly, the other character models you'll encounter don't receive nearly the same amount of attention. The game's sparse soundtrack also didn't do all that much for me. There are some decent piano pieces throughout, but they never reach the emotional heights of other games within the genre. Given the amount of effort that went into telling a story such as this, I felt a bit disappointed with the music overall. Sound effects are decent, however. I'll tip my hat to the realistic cat meowing, which definitely had my real-life cat swatting towards the TV screen. Performance of the game was also a bit of a mixed bag. I did have a few issues with clipping through objects and environments. There were times the game ran buttery smooth on my 4070, and other times where the frame rate felt just a bit off. I didn't experience any major crashes, however. The game was able to be completed from start to finish without interruption. As a narrative experience, Copycat mostly succeeds. As a gameplay experience, it is far less memorable. Players who are looking for an emotional, stress-free game with a larger emphasis on story may appreciate this one. If you signed up for Copycat expecting the next Stray, you might be disappointed. Personally, I enjoyed going through the game myself. It didn't take up much of my time, and presented an interesting take on the genre. And while it has its share of shortcomings, I could still recommend this title to someone looking for an easy, short, and pretty cute narrative game. Here at I Dream of Indie Games, we believe games are so much more than a number. That's why we have our 3 Genie Lamp tier system, with Bronze being a good game that has quite a few issues, the Silver Genie Lamp of approval for great games that have just a few minor issues, and then the elusive Golden Genie Lamp of approval for those essential indie game releases. We also have the Rusty Lamp for games that are pretty mediocre but have a faint glimmer of hope. And then there is the dreaded Indie Krampus for the games you must avoid. And when it comes to Copycat, I'm gonna award this one a very solid Bronze Genie Lamp of approval.
Oh, no. They choose violence.